Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Digitally Overwhelmed podcast video version. So, if you're just listening to me, there's a version of this episode on my YouTube. I'm going to be sharing my screen and sharing a little bit about technical SEO. So, if you don't know me, my name is Cynthia Pacheco. I run Digital Bloom IQ, where I help health and wellness businesses get found in Google and heal more of the world. This is episode 137 of the podcast. And today I want to talk about technical SEO. I've never done an episode like this, and I'm really looking forward to it. I feel like this is a topic that gets overlooked. Many people actually think a lot about technical SEO, and they just feel like it's this really heavy thing, and so they keep avoiding it. And I wanted to give you some really practical and easy things you can do today to improve the technical part of your site. So just a little warning or a little caveat, remember that if you aren't a web developer or a virtual assistant with technical skills, it's totally okay to feel overwhelmed by this stuff because it is a whole world. It's a whole set of skills. And I want to give you guys some stuff to action, but I also want to give you permission to feel like this is totally out of your zone of genius. And if it is, you're allowed to ask for help. So getting help from a web developer or a SEO expert can be a really great investment. And yeah, the other thing I want to mention is that I've created a special checklist if you want to take some of the items that I'm going to be talking about in this episode and a couple more, take it to the next level and just enable yourself and your team to start actioning this SEO. I created a checklist. So all you need to do is go to my site, digitalbloomiq.com/SEO-checklist. And there you're going to be able to download a list of items that I recommend you look at when you're starting to audit and review your site for SEO. So it's a really great resource. It's one of my favorite things that I've created so far. And I think it's just a really practical and easy place to get started instead of spinning your wheels, trying to search on the internet for next steps, just starting to take action through the checklist. So I will for sure include a link to the checklist in the show notes for this episode, which is digitalbloomiq.com/SEO/technical SEO. Pretty obvious, right? So let's review what we're going to be covering in this episode. So we're going to be talking about, like I said, technical SEO. I'm going to be giving you 3 areas of technical SEO that I think are great to get started. And I'm going to be just giving you some specific things. I'm going to be sharing with you how I've done this on my own site, and hopefully you'll find it really useful and helpful. So let's dive in. So when I talk about technical SEO, I'm talking about kind of like the back end of what it means to maintain and create and have a website, which is basically a bunch of code, stuck together, right? So when it comes to Google ranking our sites and Google understanding our sites, it's important that the code, how the site is loading, all that stuff is as good as it can be. And it's kind of an ongoing process, which I'm going to get into, because that is a big factor that Google looks at. And my favorite analogy for this is imagine, you're inviting a bunch of friends over to your house, and when they get to your house, they aren't able to open the door because it's jammed. They walk in and they're like stepping over chairs and broken furniture. Maybe the windows are broken as well. The lighting doesn't work. One of your friends wants to use the washroom and you tell them that it's not in service. So this isn't a very friendly way to have people come into your home and just to feel invited. I'm sure those people wouldn't stay around very, very much time. So it's the same thing when Google is ranking our sites. They want to make sure that the overall website experience is a good one. And they want to make sure that users are easily able to navigate the website. So this is important for us to keep in mind. And it feels like a kind of common sense thing, but many times because we find it either overwhelming or we have so many other things going on in our business, we forget to tend to our own home. And I just want to say there as a caveat that this is a little bit of an ongoing thing. So yes, there are things you could probably do in the short run that will dramatically change how your site is performing. But like something like site speed, which I'm going to be talking about, is kind of an ongoing thing. And so some clients of mine find that super overwhelming because they just want to like get it fixed and get it over with. But I think in general, it's a good thing because it's something we can keep an eye on. And when we have a little bit of extra time and energy, we can improve this instead of just like constantly trying to fix it and make it perfect. So websites, in my opinion, is a living and breathing thing. We're trying to improve it. It's kind of like our house. You know, we clean our house ongoing. It's an ongoing thing. And once in a while we do a deeper clean, but we have like our weekly cleaning routines or our daily cleaning routines, right? Just to keep things in order. Same idea. So it's important to step away from sometimes SEO, you know, we're really looking at creating new keywords or looking at how to generate backlinks, and spending time with this technical stuff and having that conversation with your web developer or with your SEO expert can just help like focus in on the tasks that are going to get you the best results in the shortest amount of time, and just setting a priority. And again, my SEO checklist is a great place to start if you do have a team or even a web developer and you don't know how to enable them and get them going. Downloading the checklist will give you a list of items to get started with. So helpful. So I find it fascinating how diverse SEO is, but I know a lot of people find that overwhelming. So if you're in that category, it's totally fine. And that's why I'm here to help you. Okay, so we're going to be talking about 3 areas of technical SEO. And again, this doesn't encompass all technical things, but I feel like these are the areas that most people can grasp, and they're the areas where you can really take some action today. So let's go through them. So the first one, we're going to be talking about 404 errors and broken links. The second one, we're going to be talking about the sitemap. Maybe some of you heard of that. You're like, oh, sitemaps. And then the third thing we're going to be talking about is site speed, which is honestly a whole topic on its own. I'll probably at some point create a whole episode on it because it is really a big topic. But I did want to talk about it today because I think like there's many things you can do to improve this right away. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And again, if you are listening to this episode, you can totally tune in to the video version of the episode, or you can keep listening. I mean, I'm going to be walking through these things pretty much verbally, and you could probably just follow along through your wherever you're listening from. So let's talk about 404 errors. So 404 errors, all that means is that a page on your site doesn't exist or isn't there. So this is my 404 page, which I am slightly embarrassed about because this isn't a very good 404 page. So most 404 pages would have a little bit more customized text here, and they would have also, so here I have a link to my homepage, but I should probably also include some links to my most popular posts or some of my services for those people who don't know who I am and they want to find that out more. So all a 404 page means is that this URL, this address at the top of the page doesn't exist. So when I type in an address like dogs, this isn't a page that exists on my site. If I click on that, it's going to take me to the 404 page. So you can customize this page so that people are getting a custom experience. And so 404 pages are really common. Again, it happens as part of a living and breathing site. We're going to change URLs. Pages get deleted. I'm going to show you an example in a second of how a 404 page can happen. But the 404 page in itself is kind of like a little sign on your website that says, hey, you aren't in a place that exists. It might have existed or maybe it never existed, but you're kind of lost, right? And sometimes we'll see those four pages that say, hey, you're lost, and they'll have a cute little graphic or whatever. So the first step here is definitely take the time to customize this page. And I'm going to go and do this for my own site because I feel like I'm not setting a very good example, but customizing this page can save you from losing visits, because if someone comes to this page, very likely they might leave, right? And that's not good. The other thing you can do is identify where you have broken links. And again, a broken link, what this means is there was an address, so there was a URL that previously existed. So just to clarify, the URL, all I'm mentioning there is, in my case here, it's digitalbloomiq.com/dogs, for example. So the URL is just the address. And so when we have a URL that doesn't exist on our site, that would be like a broken link. If we're having a link on the page, so for example, if I had on my about page, let's just hypothetically say that I incorrectly linked on my about page here on my services where it says, let's see here. So at the very bottom, I have check out my SEO services. So this links to my SEO services page. So if for some reason I made a mistake and typed that link wrong, it would go to a 404 page, right? And that would be a broken link, which we want to avoid. The other way that we can create a 404 link or a broken link is, for example, I have this, this sales page, right? And I see here that it's working and all that. And here in my Squarespace, this is the URL I've created. So for some reason, if I've decided to change the URL here, so I added an S, so SSS sales, and I save it, you'll see here that when I refresh this page, it no longer exists, right? Because I changed the URL. So this is very common. Many of us do this. We just kind of tweak the URLs, and that's fine, but we need to keep in mind that every time we change a URL, it's going to lead people to this 404 page. And if we're linking actively inside of our site, like if I had a button that had this URL previously, it would no longer work. It would take them to that 404 page. I just changed it back. Okay, so I hope that clarified. So this is the action step with this first technical item. What you need to do is identify where currently you are creating broken links. So this is the tool that I recommend. It's called brokenlinkcheck.com. You can just type in your URL here, your website, and then you click on find broken links, and it will give you a list. It takes a couple minutes, but it gives you a list of all the links on your site that are broken. And so what that allows you to do is go to each page where you have a broken link and fix it, right? Change it. So in the example of this about page, if for whatever reason I spelt the SEO dash services direction wrong, I could go back in here and fix this so that this link, when I click through, it actually works like it does here. Okay, so that is a really important part. And again, this could be something that you do quarterly. It could be something you do maybe every 6 months. You just check in on this broken link checker, and you have your team just fix those links that have accumulated, right, which is part of having a site. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is sitemaps. So what is a sitemap? So a sitemap, what it does is it tells Google how to surf your site. Surf is such a like oldie verb of viewing websites, but basically it tells Google, hey, this is how I want you to view my site, and this is how I want you to index my site. So indexing, all that means is that Google has its own Google database where it looks at all our sites. It literally like scans the site, and then it looks at and analyzes the site. So the sitemap, all it does is it tells Google, hey, these are the pages I want you to analyze, and these are the pages I don't want you to analyze. So for example, what pages wouldn't we want Google to analyze? Anything that's like a secure, like checkout, or any like, payment areas of the site. Maybe we have like client clients have like their own accounts on the site, anything that's like on the secure side. We don't want Google to show that to us in the search results. So we tell Google, hey, ignore anything on our site that is /accounts or /checkout, right? That makes sense. We don't need Google to be showing us results of those things. So we just tell Google, just ignore these URLs. And then we tell Google, hey, pay attention to these URLs. So all you need to do with the sitemap, and this is the action item with this one, is you need to go into your search console, which you're seeing right now on my screen, and you need to declare to Google, this is where the sitemap exists. So if you have a WordPress site or a Squarespace site, your sitemap gets automatically generated. On WordPress, you need to download your Yoast in order to generate that. And in most cases, it's the same URL. It's your domain /sitemap.xml. In like 99% of the cases, that's the URL that gets chosen. So you could just check that now. And so if you haven't generated that yet, then you definitely want to do that first. And then secondly, you want to go to this part of the search console. You can get here by typing in search.google.com. If you haven't already set up the search console, I have another video about that on my YouTube channel, again, for Squarespace sites, but it's the same, it's pretty much the same process for WordPress sites as well. And you just declare it. And so again, you need to register your account. Once you have it registered, on the left side menu, you're going to see around in the middle, there's sitemaps. You click on here and then you type in your sitemap. I've already done mine, but I can show you guys. So you do like that, XML, and then you hit submit, and then it will come up here. I think I haven't done a new one in a while, but once you declare it the first time, it will say like pending or viewing, or it's processing it, and then it will let you know if it doesn't process it correctly, but you want to see this little success status. So again, Google checks in with my sitemap pretty much daily, because it's just checking all the time and seeing, has she declared any new pages? When you create a new page, it takes Google a little bit of time to find it. And actually, as a little bonus tip, when you create a new blog post or a new page on your site, you can actually tell Google, hey, I want you to view this page first or immediately, right? Instead of waiting for them to find it, you can actually paste it in here. You can see I've done this with old blog posts, and Google will index it a little faster. So that's a sitemap, and that's pretty much all you need to know about sitemaps. I'm not going to get into some of the advanced things that you can do with sitemaps, but in most cases, it's pretty straightforward unless you have a more complex setup on your site. All right, and then the last thing that I wanted to touch on is site speed. And this is, like I was saying before, it's kind of like a whole topic on its own. And I probably at some point will do like a whole episode on it. But I did want to give you two pretty actionable things that you can do when it comes to site speed. So I'd say the rule of thumb is we want our site to be loading in under 3 seconds. I'm sure there'll be some SEOs out there who will argue me on this, but the faster the better. And really pay attention to how your site is loading on your phone versus your desktop. Since we're getting more and more mobile visits, and people are just spending a lot of time on their phones, you want to make sure that the experience on your phone is really easy and just friendly. Just taking a moment to like load your site on your phone might be an eye-opening experience. Many times we don't even know what our site looks like. So spend some time and look at, how's the site loading? How are all the the menus? Are you easily able to click? Are there any like pop-ups that are taking up the whole screen and are like super annoying to close? That's a big one. Try and avoid that. And if you can't, try and figure out a way to customize that a little bit. So that's important beyond site speed, just like mobile experience. But the site speed is just a really important factor, and Google definitely pays attention to just how much people are bouncing from your site because it might be spending too much time to load. You know, patience levels are super, super low. Okay. So I wanted to give you 2 action items for site speed. So the first one is images. So most of us, what do we do when we have a website image that we're loading? We just load the whole image. We just kind of like, you know, 100 and whatever, or 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, and we just kind of like load it on our site. And you want to try and avoid that, because what happens is if you load the full size image, the website, so whether it's WordPress or Squarespace or whatever you're on, it will have to do the job of resizing. So if you have an 1,000, you know, whatever, 84 pixel by 600 pixel or whatever you have, if the image on the site is actually coming up as like a 500 pixel image, like way smaller, half the size, who has to do that work of like crunching it down? The website. And that can slow down your website. So I definitely recommend first making as much as possible, resizing the image on your site, on your computer, before uploading it. So if you have a Mac, you can do this with your preview. If you're, you know, more fancy, you can do this with Photoshop. You can also do this with Canva. I think it's on the paid version of Canva, or PicMonkey. They'll let you resize the image, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but as much as possible, making it as small or as close as possible to the original loading. And of course, there'll be variations, but if you can do this offline, it's going to help slowly over time. You know, all those actions help the site load faster. The other thing you can do with images is compress them. So all this does is it just makes the image size, so the file size of the image, smaller, and it will let you just have a smaller image. The quality of the image won't change. It just allows the image to just be a smaller file size. So again, it will load faster. And all these things have a compounding effect. So a really great tool for compression is Tiny JPEG or Tiny PNG. Both these sites, all you need to do is drag and drop there your image. It does up to 20 images at a time, I'm seeing here, and it will compress them. And ta-da, you're done. So this is a really, really, it feels like a little thing that doesn't really matter, but it does matter. In the long run, it will make a huge difference. All right, so my second tip around site speed is removing any unnecessary plugins or just like add-ons on your site. So I've seen this many times. You know, WordPress sites have like a bajillion plugins that they're not using, and they're just slowing down the site. Especially in WordPress, a lot of the issues with site speed come from the order that things are loading. And so you might have a plugin that's even potentially disabled, but some parts of it are loading, and they're slowing down other things on the site. So I really recommend taking some time every couple of months to do a little bit of plugin decluttering, going back and looking at what plugins don't you need anymore, what plugins you're not using, do you have any duplicate plugins? If you feel nervous about doing this on your own, use your web developer or your SEO expert to review this with you. But doing some of this like back-end cleaning will probably feel really good. Over time, it's easy to accumulate plugins, and they could be impacting other parts of your site. So these two things can really, really help with site speed. And just having that awareness is already a huge deal. So my final tip with site speed, and just like the final action item, is using a tool like Pingdom to scan your site and to understand how it's loading. I really recommend also selecting wherever you're located, selecting the closest testing center, because that will change how things load. So a lot of times the Search Console also has, well, Google also has a testing tool, a speed testing tool, but sometimes it's not super accurate because you might be really far away. So you're going to get, your team members might get different results, and it's confusing. With Pingdom, you can actually choose where you're testing from, and and they'll give you results, and you'll decide what action you want to take. So remember, this is quite a kind of technical thing. So if the results are confusing to you, it's totally normal. I recommend, again, getting help from a web developer, whoever is helping you with your site, to take action off those. All right, my friends, those are my tips for technical SEO. Please take care of your sites. They like you, they love you. They require some maintenance and some care and just attention. And they do so much for our businesses. So really investing this time on a monthly, a quarterly basis, just to tend a little bit can make a huge difference, instead of like waiting years and years and then having like this huge list of issues. And it's just really important. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I'll be back next week, and have a lovely, lovely day. Talk soon. Bye.